This is World of Africa. Welcome to the show. My name is Erik Njoka. This week we focus on two elections in Central and West Africa that are anticipated to be intense and a game changer. The show starts right now. We begin in West Africa. Former football star George Weah is running for a second six-year term as Liberia's president. But he appears to have scored an own goal by failing to engage with a topic that is dominating the airwaves and mood on the streets: demands to set up an economic and war crimes court. What are his chances of a return? Here's a report from Monrovia.
Joseph Boakai is on a revenge mission. He lost massively in the 2017 elections. Boakai believes this time he has the numbers. At 78, he's on his last bid to become president. Then there's Alexander Cummings. At 66, he has presented himself as a good manager with skills and knowledge from a long career in business that his rivals do not have. In 2017, he came fifth. And the last opposition candidate is Tiawan Gongle. The three are yearning to beat this man, George Weah, the incumbent president. Weah says he needs more time.
So Weah said that he was coming for change. He said that Joseph Boakai, they corrupt the country, they steal money, and they made things hard for us. They were coming for change.
The former soccer star who came to power in 2017 on a wave of popular support after two unsuccessful attempts says he was on track to deliver progress in the poverty-stricken West African country, despite the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic that he said derailed his plans. 57-year-old Weah, who had a storied soccer career, rose from the slums of Liberia to the summit of world football. He played for top clubs such as Paris Saint-Germain and AC Milan. He will face 19 candidates in the presidential election.
I got confidence in the Liberian people. They gave me a mandate, and I've asked them for a second term. That's why I came to vote, and that's why they are here.
Last year, Weah fired his chief of staff and two other senior officials after the United States imposed sanctions on them for corruption. Analysts say Weah will likely win a second term.
I prefer voting for George because he is someone that has development in him. Number one, he built schools, he built roads, and is also helping some of us, the students, to go to school.
In 2017, Weah was campaigning on building new roads, a timely subject during elections which come during the rainy season when much of the country's unpaved routes are cut off from the capital Monrovia by bad weather. Building more roads is still one of his campaign agendas. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
From the West, let's move to the center of the continent, where another man is fighting for his political survival. Felix Tshisekedi announced last year that he will be in the race for presidency again. The president of the Republic of Congo joins a crowded list of presidential hopefuls, including opposition heavyweights and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Here's a report from Kinshasa.
Supporters of Felix Tshisekedi gather in front of the Independent National Electoral Commission, CENI, in capital Kinshasa. President of the Democratic Republic of Congo filed his candidacy for a second term, joining the already crowded list in this turbulent Central African country. But it is Denis Mukwege who is emerging as the star of the moment. He's a surgical gynecologist and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. His announcement to stand for December presidential elections is well received. Addressing a packed auditorium, the doctor says he wants to save a country riven by insecurity and poor leadership.
We are on the right side of our people's interests. In the face of decadence, we can't wait for it to disappear before taking action. Tomorrow will be too late. That's why I'm ready and I'm going now.
He was jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2018 alongside Yazidi activist Nadia Murad for efforts to end sexual violence as a weapon of war. The pioneering doctor founded the Panzi Hospital and Foundation in conflict-torn Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo after witnessing the horrific injuries and diseases suffered by the rape victims. Another one in the race is opposition politician Martin Fayulu, who was keeping the suspense alive for the past few weeks until he confirmed his candidacy for the presidential election.
We are going to continue to fight to demand greater transparency in the elections. Just as we did not achieve transparency through the audit of the electoral register, we will achieve it through election monitoring.
Then there is the long-time politician Moise Katumbi, a businessman and a former governor. He was the first to announce that he will be taking on Tshisekedi in the polls. Katumbi returned to the country after years of living in exile.
Forced exile is very difficult, and if you have not done anything wrong, I know that returning is a risk. There are people who called me not to come back. Don't come back, Mr. Katumbi. You'll be murdered or whatever. I'm not afraid of anyone.
The Independent National Electoral Commission announced the election date in 2022. After the poll announcement last year, President Tshisekedi expressed his intention to stand again in 2023 during a General Assembly at the Congolese National Assembly.
I am proud to confirm that the Congolese government, while remaining open to the support of our technical and financial partners, is financing 100% of the budget of the current electoral cycle according to the disbursement plans agreed with the Electoral Committee.
Tshisekedi's inauguration ceremony in 2019 capped more than 2 years of turmoil sparked by Kabila's refusal to step down when he reached the constitutional limit on his term in office. The last two presidential elections before that, in 2006 and 2011, both won by Kabila, were marred by bloodshed and dozens died in a crackdown on protests after he chose to remain in office in 2016. A country the size of continental Western Europe, the former Belgian colony lived through two regional wars in 1996-97 and 1998-2003. M23 rebels, a mostly Congolese Tutsi group, resumed fighting in late 2021 after accusing the DRC of having failed to honor an agreement to integrate its fighters into the army. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now, 2 North African countries have introduced measures to limit risk of bedbug infestation from France. Authorities in Morocco and Algeria have started inspecting and disinfecting planes, ships and land transportation. The 2 countries will also focus on cleaning airports and seaports, as well as inspecting and sanitizing baggage amid fears the French SARS may soon reach beyond the continent.
2 North African nations are putting their guards up. Morocco and Algeria have introduced measures to limit the risk of bedbug infestation as France reportedly grapples with a surge in numbers of the blood-sucking insect. The Moroccan Health Ministry has taken all appropriate measures to limit the risk of introduction and spread of this insect on the national territory. The Algerian Health Ministry has also decided to implement health regulations and monitoring centers at its borders. Algerian authorities said that 1.5 million foreign tourists have visited the country so far in 2023. Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Health in both countries are using social media to spread the word of caution to their citizens and those traveling from Europe, especially France. France was forced to shut 7 schools over growing concerns of bedbug infestation. Aghast citizens have reported seeing the creatures in recent weeks on trains, the Paris metro, as well as in cinemas and in schools. The sightings have sent a shudder through the country.
This issue of bedbugs affects health, the economy, transport and tourism, so it requires a comprehensive approach.
French government officials have urged for calm following reported bedbug sightings that went viral over the past few days.
There must be no denial, no hysteria, I insist. So they have been checked. The trains have been checked. Sometimes they have been treated. But I'm telling you, and we are telling you, if that's the case, there have been no confirmed cases of bedbugs in the cases that have been reported, particularly in the photos of the metro that have been circulating recently.
They come out at night to feed on human blood. leave red areas, blisters, or large rashes on the skin and can cause intense itching or allergic reactions. They also often cause psychological distress, sleeping issues, anxiety, and depression. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And still in North Africa, Islamist militants in Mali began a blockade of Timbuktu by cutting road access in August and then shut off river and air routes in an offensive that has put the city once again on the front line of an insurgency. People living in cities in Mali under siege by Al-Qaeda-linked militants say they are facing shortages of food, fuel and medicine and rapidly rising prices. The blockades have come as fighting intensifies between the army, who are backed by Russian Wagner mercenaries, and both Islamist groups and ethnic Tuareg separatist fighters.
It's been more than a decade since jihadist militants captured Mali's Timbuktu. But the city, a centuries-old centre of Islamic learning, is again under siege, raising fears that Mali is descending into chaos. Al-Qaeda-affiliated insurgents began a blockade of Timbuktu in August, cutting road access and shutting off river and air routes. Then, the bombing began. On September 21st, witnesses said rockets hit a hospital, killing 2 children. Timbuktu businessman Sori Toure says the shelling is what worries people most.
This creates a real psychosis and leaves its mark on people's minds. I myself have this fear inside me. What's much more serious is the fact that it affects people's psychology.
Back in 2012, a Tuareg rebellion was overtaken by jihadists who captured Timbuktu and pressed south towards the capital Bamako. The advance was halted by French forces and United Nations peacekeepers. But there will be no such intervention now. Mali's military rulers have severed ties with France and kicked its troops out of the country. In June, it ordered the UN's 13,000-strong force to leave. Since then, the Al-Qaeda-affiliated JNIM has launched its offensive in central Mali. Fighting has resumed between the army and Tuareg rebels from the north. Islamic State allied insurgents have continued to carry out attacks in the east. Russia's Wagner Group, which has sent 1,000 mercenaries to support the junta, has failed to fill the gap.
It's hard to see who might come to Mali's rescue this time.
Ulf Lessing, head of the Sahel program at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, said there is a risk of civil war.
People are obviously, in panic or getting worried. Many are leaving. And it might get worse because the UN, the peacekeeping force is still there, helping a bit of, to achieve a bit of stability. But once they're out, then violence might really, spike.
More than 650 people have died in conflict in Mali in the 2 months after the UN began its withdrawal. That's a 40% rise over the previous 2 months, the US-based Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project said. Mali's authorities, who consolidated power in coups in 2020 and 2021, did not respond to specific requests for comment. On Monday, however, the army released a statement describing September as a turbulent month and said it would continue fighting its enemies. After being confirmed as interim president in May 2021, coup leader Colonel Assimi Goïta had this to say.
We had to choose between the stability of Mali and chaos, and we chose stability.
Instead, with the country internationally isolated, Mali now appears to be in meltdown. And in a region already reeling from several military coups, the violence creates a further risk of instability.
Now, a non-profit startup called archive.ng is attempting to digitize every edition of every newspaper, 50 in all, published in Nigeria since 1st of January 1960, the year of independence from Britain. The archive launched its first tranche of documents last September. Dozens of volunteers spent months scouring libraries and meeting with publishers to set copies of the old newspapers.
For a long time, Fuad Lawal had difficulty in getting simple information about Nigeria's history online. In 2019, he stumbled upon 1980s newspapers in the Usman Dan Fodio University Library in Sokoto while on a work trip. Realizing the wealth of information not available online, he questioned the broader need for such accessibility.
Publishing did not really become mainstream in Nigeria online until like the late 2000s, early 2010s, right? And the people that were in print, the bulk of publishers did not do could not, for the most part, even afford the work of bringing all of their archives online. And so what we end up with is this massive repository of history that very few people have access to. And so the question became like, if I have this need, how many more people have this need? And that's pretty much how we got started.
Lawal and his startup team at archive.ng embarked on a mission to digitize newspapers from a pilot period of 1960 to 2010. Within 6 weeks, they had located 97% of the papers. However, the COVID-19 lockdowns and issues acquiring the appropriate scanning technology delayed the project until April 2023. The former journalist explained that while snippets of Nigeria's history exist online, the project's aim is to capture not only significant events, but also the daily lives of ordinary people.
Documentation is very, very important because it helps preservation of information, especially lost information or not enough information that is there on the internet, because most of these things we are documenting, we can't find them in real details or in its originality.
It is those little things, because whenever we think of history, we tend to think about big things, politics, leadership, but it's also the small things, like how did we date in the 70s, and what were we eating? When did jollof rice become mainstream, right? When did we start fighting over jollof rice? Definitely not the 60s, right? When I think of misinformation and even like disinformation, I think of it fundamentally as serving one purpose. There is a massive information vacuum, and our archives are going to fill it up.
Archive.ng is in the process of cataloguing print material from over 30 publishers across Nigeria. This involves obtaining permission to digitize archives, sorting and scanning the papers, and passing them through a quality control process before uploading them to the cloud. After scanning 50,000 pages and over 120,000 stories, Archive.ng went live last month for its pilot phase. The project, funded by donations, has raised over $30,000 to date. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
What if plastic waste could power your car? Well, in Kenya, one entrepreneur is turning plastic waste into fuel to power cars and all kinds of engines. Watch.
Plastic waste is a growing menace across the world. The complex chemical structures that make plastics so tough and durable also make plastics difficult to break down. A company in Kenya is converting plastic into liquid fuel.
ProGreen Innovations is a refuse-derived fuel manufacturer. We turn waste materials into usable fuel. Currently, our focus is waste plastic. So waste plastic, we take it through a pyrolysis process, and we end up with usable fuel, which is alternative fuel for petrol and diesel engines.
Pyrolysis involves heating the plastic at very high temperatures in the absence of oxygen, so combustion doesn't occur. Heating and liquefying the plastic turns it back into an oil or hydrocarbon liquid. The process results in combustible gases and biochar. Some of the gases are condensed into a liquid called bio or pyrolysis oil. Other byproducts are captured and turned into biochar, which is used to fuel the furnace.
We produce two kinds of alternative fuel. The first fuel is alternative petrol. The alternative petrol is used for small to medium-sized machines So you have power saws, which is a chainsaw, you have the water pump, lawnmowers as well. Any small machine, that fuel will be usable. For the diesel, alternative diesel fuel, that's usable by heavy-duty diesel engines, generators. It's used by vehicles as well. My own vehicle, that's what I use.
According to the United Nations Environment Programme, global plastic waste production amounts to 400 million tons a year. It's estimated that only 12% of it is incinerated and 9% is recycled. To solve part of this issue, at least locally, Mureto sources waste plastic from dump sites or buys it from resellers. Climate change experts say that it is a good way to deal with the problem of plastic waste by turning it into something useful.
There is valid concern about harmful gases that are released through pyrolysis process, but people need to know the difference between pyrolysis and incineration. Incineration is burning in presence of air. Pyrolysis is burning outside in an enclosed system. So by itself already there is a limited amount of toxic gases that are released. But those toxic gases, even though they are released, there are now technologies that can help actually harness those gases or actually purify them.
ProGreen Innovations has the capacity to produce 1,000 litres of fuel every 2 to 3 days. Mureto says 80% of the plastic waste used turns into fuel. He isn't selling his fuel yet, as he has to secure approval from the Kenya Bureau of Standards. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Thank you very much for watching this week's episode of Wild of Africa. Get in touch with us on all our social media platforms and share your feedback about the show there. My name is Erik Njoka. Keep watching WION World is One. Until next time, goodbye for now. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.